I always found Mother's Day and Father's Day to be pretty awkward for a while because if you really think about this, it doesn't really make sense. It's not really quite a holiday. It's on Sunday. It was started by somebody who I suppose thought that mothers should be more appreciated or something. From a Confucian standpoint, this doesn't make sense. I mean, there's no such thing as a Mother's Day. There's no such thing as a Father's Day, because every day is really, uh, I suppose you could say, Mother's Day or Father's Day in the sense that you are regularly practicing appreciation and gratitude and love and respect for your parents. And if you want to imagine how weird this would sound to somebody of the past. Think about somebody announcing, okay, today is wife's day. So everybody who's married, we all go and do something nice for a wife on the same day. That's really strange, you know? Um, or if it's like girlfriend's day or whatever, it just comes off as sort of impersonal, a little silly. You could do this, I suppose, as like a kind of a little thing. And I suppose that's what Valentine's Day ends up being. It's just sort of you might have your anniversary, but then you have this other day, and then it's just okay. Well, it'd be kind of fun to do something a little different. And but as for Mother's Day or Day being a serious thing, that doesn't really make sense. So you would celebrate your mother's birthday, and you know, that would be what you would have besides Mother's Day. If you just think about the logistics of it, uh, everybody has a mother, and lots of women are themselves mothers, so they have to both celebrate their own mothers. Um, but at the same time, they are supposed to be celebrated. And so um, at least with something like Wives' Day, you don't have that sort of problem where you're both supposed to do something else as both the recipient and the giver. So it doesn't, this all really simply doesn't really make sense to do. I do want to relate this to the analects because I think Confucius says something that's actually abstractly on point regarding days like this. Um, because Mother's Day is really not well thought through. Uh, as I just talked about, the logistics don't make sense. So what Confucius said was that when the Tao, the way, prevails in the world, rituals, music, punitive expeditions, attacks against foreign powers, they come from the emperor. When the way does not prevail in the world, these things come from what's called the feudal lords. Okay, so the emperor, by the way, is not simply the emperor. His term is son of heaven, and that doesn't mean literally a son of God. It means, this is the highest, um, most exemplary human being. Okay. So this is sort of like another way to understand this is like heaven's prince, you know? Um, but basically, um, this is a person who has the highest position in government. So the general idea here, and I'm not done with this analect, the general idea here is that these things, okay, culture, ritual, music, war comes from the government, right? Okay. Now, when the way does not prevail in the world, these very high and lofty and important things, which include war, come more from the feudal lords. Okay, so back then we're talking about the Zhou dynasty. We have these lords that are um, basically the king of these different states. Okay, and these states are all part of the Zhou dynasty. So there's sort of an irony here today where the United States of America is called the United States because they're no longer states, you see. They don't have their own armies. They don't have full control of their laws. Um, they are really more like semi-autonomous zones within a larger empire, a larger polity called the USA. Now, the Zhou dynasty is more like a United States in the sense that these states have their own armies, they have their own courts, and so functionally they have their own kings. And the Son of Heaven or the Emperor is more like the Lord of these kings. All right. So that's how that would work. So by the time you have the first kind of um, degeneration, I suppose you could say, you have the way not prevailing in the world. Okay, so these kings of the different states, those persons and their courts initiate cultural change, lead, music, as well as war. Okay. And then that can persist, according to Confucius. He says that when the issue from the feudal lords, the kings here, it is seldom more than 10 generations before the lords lose control of these things. Okay. Then, then after that, if you have these duties being fulfilled from the ministers, like the prime minister and below, then Confucius says it is seldom more than 5 generations before the ministers lose control of these duties. Okay. And then he says, and once household ministers or household stewards. So in other words, these are the you kind of have a sort of um what is that called? Oh, fractals. You have a sort of a fractals kind of situation here, right? Because at at the highest level you have a government, and then there are smaller communities called states where they have their own government. And then within those states you have these various clans, okay? These noble clans, okay? And then they have their own version of ministers, and those are the household ministers. All right. Now, when the household ministers issue commands for the whole state, then Confucius says it's unlikely the state will survive beyond 3 generations. Okay. And then he caps it off by saying, when the way prevails in the world, governing does not lie in the hands of the ministers, okay, because the ministers are those who facilitate it and discuss it, but they do not initiate it, right? Um, and so once we get to the situation uh, where control of government doesn't even reside with the ministers at all. And instead, um, let me put it this way, when the way prevails in the world, governing does not lie in the hands of the ministers. Where the way prevails in the world, the common people do not debate state affairs. Okay, they do not debate matters of government. Okay, so obviously, this generally tells you that Confucianism is really fundamentally incompatible with things like democracy, right? Because we have these commoners, they're not specialized, they're not educated. There's no real good way for them to coordinate their thoughts, opinions, intentions with each other, right? That's the role of government. And government is structured to be able to do these things, is capable of finding people who have the ability to do these things well. And there's few of them enough that they can come to a consensus, an agreement, and an understanding of how to move forward together in unison. Right. And then you have that system, that kind of fractal system, so that when you have these initiatives at the very top by the emperor, they can all flow in unison all the way down to the commoners. But when the commoners are initiating these things, you're in a lot of trouble. Okay. Why does that have to do with Mother's Day? Because Mother's Day was invented by a common person, right? Simply thinking there's not enough. And this woman actually later regretted coming up with Mother's Day because, unsurprisingly, in a democracy, what happens is that that the moneyed interests seize upon this opportunity to make more money. So what do we think about things like Valentine's Day and Mother's Day and so forth? These really kind of nondescript, generic ways to celebrate loved ones, where they have their own birthdays and we have our own anniversaries and so forth. Okay. What happens is that it becomes a big marketing, it becomes a big marketing opportunity, a big marketing or financial initiative, right? So it just becomes that. And the person who invented Mother's Day uh, ended up regretting inventing Mother's Day because of this reason. So there's not really a good reason to celebrate such a day. It's a very silly, poorly thought out day. You know, if you want to do something good for your mother, just do something good for your mother. And if you want particular days to celebrate your mother, then you have things like, birthdays to do that on. And so that's what I want to say about this. Uh, it's a very awkward day, and it's not something that one should necessarily um, go and practice. Another thing is, what if you're a woman and you have um, not been able to have children? Then it's a really rather sad day because you're not celebrate. This day is to celebrate mothers in general, and you might celebrate your own mother on this day. But then if you have no children of your own, then you're just reminded of that. And if your mother has passed away, then it's also sad too. So there's just this is just a very poorly thought out holiday, and it really should, I think, honestly, be phased out.